Mr. Grosh and Mr. Mann, I thank you for being here today. And I know of no problem that we have with you personally. It's a situation that we're trying to get to the bottom of, and we thank you for appearing here today. Mr. Grosh, you and Mr. Mann were designated as directors of the AIC, which was described in its own website as a, quote, international think tank. It's very interesting on its website. It's described as the American International Center is a public policy research foundation founded in 2001 under the high-powered directorship of David A. Grosh and Brian J. Mann. While only recently incorporated, the AIC has been striving to advance the cause of greater international empowerment for many years. Based in sunny Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, the AIC staff is using 21st century technology and decades of experience to make the world a smaller place. In summary, the AIC is bringing great minds together from all over the globe. It goes on in that vein. Mr. Grosh, I will begin with you. What did the AIC do?
I was only involved maybe 5 months, 4 or 5 months. Whole time I was involved, we rented the first floor of a house and installed some computers.
Mr. Mann, do you know what AIC did?
Mr. Chairman, upon the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer your questions based on my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Mr. Mann, did you know that you were designated a director until you recently interviewed with the Justice Department?
Again, I must respectfully decline to answer your question based on my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Mr. Grosh, did you give Mr. Scanlon permission to put your name up on the AIC website?
On the website, no.
Did you give Mr. Scanlon permission to hold you out as a director for the AIC?
Yes.
Have you ever received an Mr. Grosh, I'd like to show you an exhibit which is 195. Can you provide that to the witness?
Sir.
She got. Look in there at 195. It's a letter from the AIC that's under your signature. Could I have it right? There we are. This letter, signed by David Grosh, as president. Thank you very much for your recent contribution to the American International Center. Your donation of $200,000 will go a long way in assisting the AIC in its efforts to carry out its public policy agenda. As you know, the AIC is committed to influencing key policymakers on issues important to you and your constituents, on and on. The American International Center is a nonprofit corporation dedicated to educating the public on important issues such as our national relationship with commonwealths, foreign governments, and sovereign territories. As we discussed, we are not a tax-exempt organization, as your contribution is subject to tax. Again, we appreciate your generous support. Do you recall writing that letter, Mr. Grosh?
No, I don't.
Do you ever remember seeing it?
No, I don't.
Mr. Grosh, did the AIC conduct any board meetings?
I recall one.
And how long did that last?
15 minutes.
You recall any business that was discussed at these board meetings?
Off the top of my head, no. I'm sure we discussed something. It's not to be glib.
Mr. Mann, I think it says when these meetings took place, the extent of your role in the AIC at that time was cleaning the downstairs office space. Is that correct? Oh, that was Mr. Mann doesn't want to answer. As far as you were concerned, Mr. Grosh, was this basically another Scanlon entity?
Well, legally, no, it was Mr. Mann and I, but, you know, he was calling the shots, sure.
So were you a little surprised when all this information started coming out that you were a director of a internationally respected think tank?
Surprised? Not really. The reason I got out of it, when I found out it involved the federal government, Indian tribes, and gambling, I knew that was headed down the wrong way.
I want to point out again, Mr. Grosh, I appreciate your cooperation. I'm disappointed in your lack of, Mr. Mann, but this committee holds no brief against you on this issue. We're trying to get to the bottom of things. We know of no allegation of wrongdoing on your part, at least that I know of. Tell me how this all began, Mr. Grosh. Were you friends with Mr. Scanlon, or?
Yeah, I've known Mr. Scanlon since I was about 14.
And what happened? He approached you in some way
Phone call.
and said,
Do you want to be head of an international corporation? It's a hard one to turn down.
and at the time, were you living in Rehoboth Beach?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Scanlon then informed you that your home would be the headquarters, or did you even?
Actually, at that point, no, there was no headquarters.
Tell me, could you tell me just the sequence of events that took place after that?
I asked him what I had to do, and, you know, he said nothing, so that sounded pretty good to me. And then, I'm trying to think how it all happened. He came by, we spoke about it, and I just was, you know, at the time, I was like, yeah, sure, but not really taking it seriously. And then he had me sign some papers, and then we went to I met him here in D.C., and we took over the bottom of the house I was living in.
Did you receive compensation for this role?
Yes.
And your background is a very honorable one, I understand, as a lifeguard. Is that correct?
Among other things. I'm not a lifeguard anymore, no.
And could you give us a little resume of some of your background?
Right now, I'm a excavator. I'm a machine operator, construction worker, mentor in preschools, bartender, typical beach
Thank you.
employment.
And do you remember the extent of the compensation that you received from Mr. Scanlon, roughly?
No more than 2,000, 2,500.
A month?
No, total.
Total. Did Mr. Scanlon promise you any fringe benefits?
Well, you know, I don't know if this is related to the AIC. We went to a Washington Capitals Pittsburgh Penguin hockey game.
Good. Oh, did you go to St. Bart's with him?
No, by that time I was no longer.
See. Well, I want to be very clear, Mr. Mann, and I'm not asking you to change your position, but we view this as just a gigantic scam, and you two individuals were used clearly by Mr. Scanlon, and we feel very strongly that your testimony could help us, and I hope you'll maybe reconsider that or get a new lawyer, Mr. Mann. But I hope you'll reconsider it because this is really not for. You obviously had nothing to do with posting this description of AIC on a website, did you, Mr. Grosh?
No, sir. If I may,
Please.
I'm an adult. He didn't use me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Got sense, you know.
It's a pretty good deal, huh?
Well, Obviously not.
At the time, it seemed like a good deal.
Well, you know, I didn't just crawl out of a cotton patch. Anything that sounds too good to be true usually is, you know.
And they used the bottom floor of your house to.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
We did.
They did. I see. Thank you. Ms. Redenauer, since 1982, you've served as president of the National Center for Public Policy Research. Is that true? Yeah. In October 2002, as your capacity as president of NCPPR, as you testified, you received $1 million from the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk about how you came to receive the $1 million from the Choctaw tribe. In June, July 2002, you told Mr. Abramoff that the NCPPR wanted to keep its, quote, program numbers, unquote, up for marketing purposes. That's according to emails that we have.
In general, yes, sir.
So you told Mr. Abramoff the NCPPR would be willing to participate in any program consistent with the NCPPR's tax-exempt purpose that Mr. Abramoff was working on.
In general, yes, sir.
Mr. Abramoff told you he and his firm invented for the Choctaw tribe a, quote, new kind of lobbying, as you've testified. And you concluded that such an educational purpose was consistent with NCPPR's charitable mission.
Yes, sir.
In October 2002, Mr. Abramoff told you the Choctaw tribe had $1 million to do this educational project, as you have testified. But, Ms. Woodenauer, before you allowed Mr. Abramoff to use the NCPPR as a pass-through, you repeatedly warned him that whatever the $1 million was used for needed to be appropriate for nonprofit charitable foundation.
I certainly did.
After you received the $1 million, Mr. Abramoff instructed you to cut 3 checks. One, $450,000 to Mr. Abramoff's private charity, the Capital Athletic Foundation, $500,000 to Mr. Scanlon's outfit, Capital Campaign Strategies, and $50,000 to a small lobbying firm called Nurnberger and Associates, correct?
Yes, except that in some cases there were wire transfers.
Thank you. What, if anything, did Mr. Abramoff tell you about the $450,000 payment to Capital Athletic Foundation?
It was to be a grant to the Capital Athletic Foundation for its purposes, consistent with the wishes of the ultimate donor, the Mississippi Choctaw.
And as you testified, you didn't know that the Capital Athletic Foundation was Mr. Abramoff's private charity.
Actually, I did not know K-Gold was owned by Mr. Abramoff. I did know that he had an association with the Capital Athletic Foundation. I simply found it consistent with what I knew to be a warm relationship between him and the Choctaws.